Awesome.
Yay!
Thank you, Caroline, so much. Hello, and welcome to the 21 Days Face Your Fears online challenge. I'm Bristena Mantu, transformation facilitator, energy therapist, and writer, and my mission is helping people heal their past so as to be able to live the life of their bliss. I'm super excited to be your host on your journey of personal growth through empowerment, fearlessness, and the power of community. Today I have a very special guest. Her name is Carolyn Elliott. Hi, Caroline.
Hello, Bristena.
Carolyn Elliott is a world-renowned occultist, teacher, and coach. She's the editor of the online Witch magazine and the author of the highly acclaimed creativity book Awaken Your Genius. Also, she's one of the most inspiring business coaches I've ever met, and she's one of my favorite bloggers. I'm really always looking forward to seeing her next blog, and her writing style is so juicy and charming, enticing, and provocative. I've learned so much from you in terms of being able to express myself fully and shamelessly. Thank you very much for joining us, Caroline. It's a pleasure to have you in our challenge. How are you?
Thank you, Bristena. I am so good. That was such a warm welcome. Thank you.
All right, so on the topic of fearlessness, what does fearlessness mean to you and how does it relate to personal growth?
Ooh, I love this question. So, to me, fearlessness involves recognizing where I'm afraid to go and seeing that is kind of the framework of who I will allow myself to be. So anything that I think is like too scary or too risky is challenging my comfort zone, and it's challenging my familiar sense of myself. So that's always a sign to me that, like, wow, this is somewhere, this is something that I have to confront in order to continue to grow. And there's something that I'm always trying to emphasize to folks, which is that growth hurts. Like, there's pain involved. There doesn't have to be suffering involved. In fact, suffering is usually created when we refuse to grow. But growth involves feeling those uncomfortable sensations of fear as we go ahead and take actions that are at the boundaries of the known world, of our known worlds. So yeah, it's painful. Maybe that doesn't sound like the most encouraging thing ever. Facing pain, going towards the pain rather than away from it.
But it's so worth it.
It's so worth it. It is so worth it. It's like the way that I see it actually is that I only really have two choices, and it's between pain and suffering. So I can ask myself, do I want the pain of going ahead and doing this thing that I'm scared to do, or do I want the suffering of staying where I am and basically stagnating?
This reminded me of a quote from Dr. Bruce Lipton that I think is worth mentioning in this context. It was something like, let's step away from the uncomfortable comfort of being a victim and step into the uncomfortable power of creatorship.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, that's pretty much just what I'm saying.
Awesome. What about on your own personal journey of growth and manifesting your potential and being this amazing lady who you are now? What were some of the fears that you encountered on your path and you've managed to overcome, and now you can help us with them as well?
Sure. Wow. Oh my gosh, so many. I think for a long time, I really had a fear that let's see, how do I say? I had this idea that I had to make myself palatable or acceptable to the world, and that I needed to tone down my weirdness, that I needed to, speak in like businessy type terms or TED Talk type terms, that I couldn't just like show up in the world and say, hi everybody, I'm Carolyn, I'm a witch. Like, clearly that wasn't going to work. And so for years, I really tried to I was in academia, I got my doctorate, I was teaching at a university. I was really trying to fit in and speak in a way and write in a way that matched the standards of a certain kind of discourse. And what I realized is that the standards of those kind of professional discourses have an inherent downside built into them. They're inherently limiting. They're designed to confine. And I realized that it was possible to speak directly to people who were already inclined to understand the strange way that I wanted to speak. And and since I started doing that, since I started just presenting my whole self, weirdness and all, to the world, that's actually when my success started to come.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I've recently listened to one of your interviews in a creativity online summit, and you were mentioning the idea that there are three types of people: those who are going to dislike you, those who are going to like you if you just tweak it a little bit here and there, what you're exposing, what you're sharing, and those who are absolutely gonna love what you say every time. Can you please expand on that idea?
Sure. So the core part, so I found that idea to be true over and over again. And the core bit of it that my mentor told me was, Carolyn, you only ever have to address yourself to those people who are already inclined to love what you have to say, to want more of it, to just be crazy about it. Those are the only people you have to worry about. And when she said that to me, that like whoosh, expanded my whole world, because I had really, like I said, been on this campaign to try to make myself legible and persuade people who, maybe they don't want to be persuaded. And I was putting so much energy into that, and it was a waste. It was unnecessary. So these days I focus on speaking to people who are ready to hear me.
And now you have a massive online community.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. It's beautiful, and it's just, so I really think that the function of leadership has so much to do with just speaking the truth as well as I can understand it. And there's something really miraculous about that, which is my own deepest truth turns out to be the deepest truth of many other people.
Mm.
And there's a great feeling of relief and a great feeling of community when you can articulate something that people have been struggling to articulate for themselves. A leader begins her leadership just simply by articulating her own deepest truth, which turns out to be the deepest truth of many people who listen to her.
Yes.
And when you can do that, when you can say out loud things that people have sort of secretly been thinking to themselves,
yes.
or, there's great power in that.
Yeah.
And in beginning to speak those truths out loud, you attract people, you galvanize people, and you can start shifting the direction that things are going. And it's been a really rewarding journey for me, just saying out loud the things that I think about magic and about witchiness and about ways that we need to change the world, and seeing that there's so many other people who are like, yes, let's do that. So yeah.
Awesome. I love that so much, and you're very inspiring to me because I'm aspiring to do the same, to share my truth and my message in a completely uncensored way. Like, this is who I am. If you like me, just follow me or join in the conversation. Otherwise, just go and find somebody else that you resonate with. And your vibe attracts your tribe as well. So for me, it's very great when people who are of my soul tribe to be around me and to do stuff together, because we share the same passions and values and interests. Okay, and I also heard you say once that you believe that everybody is magical, but some people are consciously aware of their magicalness. So what do you think are the main blocks or fears that are preventing us from realizing how magical and how powerful we are and how creative we are?
Oh my goodness. So I have a sense that one of the main blocks that most of us have to cultivating our magic is actually the fear of getting what we want. So when like that Bruce Lipton quote that you offered, like, there's such huge responsibility in realizing that we have such a role in creating all of our experience. And to me, I could really get stuck on that for a long time, because I'd be like, well, I don't know how it's true that I'm creating all of my experience when so many things in my life suck, and I'm at the mercy of this cruel fate that I don't want. And so for me, a giant step in beginning to cultivate my own power was realizing that there was a big part of me that did want that cruel fate, that wanted the pain, that was curious about it, that wanted these intense, overwhelming experiences of poverty, limitation, being doubted, being attacked, being betrayed, and for the whole spectrum of yuckiness. I wanted it. My soul was hungry for it, and a part of me hugely enjoyed it. And when I started to realize that I didn't have to shame or repress that enjoyment, because I think that's something that our culture habitually does, is we shame and we repress real enjoyment, especially enjoyment of things that we shouldn't enjoy. Like, I shouldn't enjoy being betrayed. I shouldn't enjoy being in a cycle of poverty. And yet, when I got so honest with myself, I found out that that was in me, that that enjoyment was there. And if I could just be present with it, without shaming it, without trying to push it away, suddenly what woke up in me was this sense of like, oh my gosh, I really do get everything that I want and that I enjoy.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, and when I started deeply receiving that and deeply getting off on it, it was like my desire and my enjoyment started to evolve, and I started to be able to enjoy and desire wholeheartedly, you know, the more wholesome type things like prosperity, like happy relationships. But I wasn't able to do that. My deepest desire wasn't able to evolve as long as I was saying to myself, I don't want this poverty. I don't want this betrayal. This is horrible. I'm feeling victimized by it. So that kind of leap is a pretty intense leap for a person to make. And a lot of the teaching that I do, a lot of the writing surrounds helping people be able to find that within themselves. Because when you find that within yourself, the reason I'm so excited about it is because it's a giant kind of liberation. And it's one that, when you really start to get it, it's like you're unstoppable, because you realize there's actually nothing that you can't enjoy.
Wow. Okay, so how do you explain the fact that this deeper part of you was actually enjoying all those yucky things, as you called them?
Yeah, sure. Well, so it's pretty easy to explain. To me, it has a lot to do with the fact that who I am and who we all are is a lot more big and vast than just our conscious minds, right? Like, I like to think that I don't just like to think, I would say that this is concretely the way things actually are. The way things actually are is that we are all dreaming right now. This waking life is all a dream, just as much as our nighttime dreams are. It's just a dream that kind of is thicker and heavier and moves a little bit more slowly, but it's a dream. And I appear to be a character in this dream named Carolyn Elliott from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. But I'm not really just this character. I am the dreamer, and I am the whole dream. So, you're part of the dream, you're the dreamer too, and it's like the dreamer wants all of these experiences, like any experience of duality. So we live in a world of duality, of space and time, light and dark, up and down. So there's no experience of duality that doesn't include the dark. So therefore, if I'm dreaming a dream in which there's this spectrum of possibilities, I must want all of the possibilities. Otherwise, I would just, my spirit or whatever would just be like bathing in white light in some void somewhere. So what this practice that I'm talking about of coming to realize my enjoyment of even the darker things in life is actually a process of coming to identify with what we could call the anima mundi, the psyche, the soul of the world, the dreamer of the dream, rather than just identifying with my fragile, limited, mortal, individual self.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, so it's, I know I'm far out. I was just like, whoosh, this whole metaphysical thing.
Yeah, but this ties in very well with shadow work, and I know fearlessness can be massively improved and actualized through doing shadow work, so can you expand on that more, please?
Absolutely.
And so what it is for people who don't know what shadow work is, if you can briefly describe what it is and how does it relate to fearlessness?
Certainly. So the interesting thing is is that the term shadow work comes from the work of Carl Jung, the famous Swiss psychologist. And I actually disagree with Jung on a few points. For Jung, the shadow was just part of the psyche, part of many archetypes in the psyche. And the shadow was, he defined it as everything that we don't want to be. So he was on to something there. Because I'm going to slow myself down. What I gradually realized is that the shadow is actually pretty much everything that the ego is not. It's the whole unconscious, and it's the whole rest of the world, really. It's like everything that exists that I think is not me is in my shadow. It's the other side of me. It's the flip side of this dream character, Carolyn, that I think that I am. So the work of integrating the shadow is really identical with the work of integrating the whole world, of coming into a kind of non-dual perception. Now, when people usually talk about shadow work, they talk about things like owning your greed or owning your anger, which is good. Like, if you're an angry person and you don't want to identify with anger, you suppress it, and yet you find yourself acting out anger in these various ways, it is an excellent first step to own your anger and say, yes, I am angry. That's me. But that's really just like the very first little step in shadow work, and most people tend to think that that's all of it. It's definitely not. That's just coming out of denial. So when you come out of denial and you own your anger, you're still an angry person. So how do you work with that anger, and how do you shift your perception of who you are? So the work that I do, involving realizing that all circumstances in my life are desired circumstances, I like to say that wanting or having is evidence of wanting. If there's anything happening in my life, I take that as a sign that there's a part of my being that desires it. So once you start to do that, once you start to get off on everything that you've ever experienced, including the scary things, including the upsetting things, the anger dissolves, and the self-pity dissolves, and the resentment dissolves, because there's an understanding, which isn't just like a glossing it over. It isn't just like a, oh, everything's sunshine and lollipops. No, it's like this kinky, intense confrontation with all of, what you could say our demons are. And if you think about any great spiritual master, some famous ones being Jesus and Buddha, both of those guys spent 40 days in deep confrontation with the demons of their own unconscious. And that's basically what I do and what I invite people to do.
And what are some of the results of this kind of work?
Sure. So the results of this kind of work are that the people that I work with, and myself included, find ourselves having a much more expanded experience of life. So, for example, all magic happens through synchronicity, right? Like a seeming coincidence. That's how it unfolds. It doesn't really unfold in wand battles like in Harry Potter, although sometimes I wish it did. But it happens through synchronicity. Synchronicity means a pattern of events that have a resonance of meaning. So events can only happen to me that share the same meaning that I have. So if my meaning, if the way that I deeply perceive myself is as a victim, as somebody beset by cruel fate, the meaning of circumstances that synchronously occur around me will share that meaning. But when I do this kind of deep shadow work, and I do this kind of, I like to call it existential kink, getting off on the darkest parts of life, I actually change who I see myself to be, right? Because suddenly I see that I am not this put upon victim. I am this very intensely powerful creator. I'm the dreamer of the dream. And so the events in my life begin to reflect that expanded context, that expanded meaning of who I believe myself to be. So beautiful opportunities, beautiful relationships, um, challenging ones too. I mean, because life is a constant process of growth, there's obviously still difficult, challenging things that occur. It's not like you can just beam yourself into Shangri-La. Like, people still get sick, people still have financial challenges, but it's in a different context where suddenly events are resonating with this more beautiful, alive, and complete sense of myself.
Yeah, I agree with that, and indeed, since I've learned how to exit this box of victimhood and understanding my own power, that I'm creating my life and the meaning in my life, the meaning that I ascribe to my life events and situations. My life has become so much more expanded and magical and full of amazing opportunities, and also I see things differently, and I recommend anybody who's on a journey of personal growth to look more into shadow work and bring their repressed and unconscious aspects of their psyche to the light of their consciousness and work with both their light and their dark aspects, because the more we embrace our whole being and become whole and complete and therefore divine.
Oh yes, absolutely. Bristena, you just put it so well. And as you were talking, I got this image in my mind. Like, sometimes people like to say, people in the metaphysical or New Age communities like to say, I'm a light worker. And whenever I hear that, something inside me always is like, because I know what that means. Like, I know on a deep level, everything is made of light on like a quantum level.
Yes.
But oftentimes when I hear people say I'm a light worker, what I'm hearing them say is, I'm very good with my upper chakras, with my love and with my vision, and I just like to stay up in my upper chakras. And I get nervous around somebody who says they're light workers. What that often means to me is that there's somebody who's not willing to go deep down into the lower animal, instinctual parts of our being, the shit and the blood and the death and the hunger and the passion. So I loved what you were just saying about, divinity, inhabiting our divinity, having to do with inhabiting the wholeness of who we are.
Yes.
Because, it's so obvious to me that, right, there's no God without the devil. There's no up without the down. And if we're going to live in wholeness and fullness, that means, coming to terms with the devil within us.
Absolutely. And making peace with him and seeing that it's not as bad as we think it was.
No. Oh, yeah, exactly. So that's interesting too, is because, the devil in many contexts really is just the instinctual, animal, primal energies. And those energies become kind of trickster type energies in most of our lives for the very reason that we've been taught to not engage with them, to avoid them, and to suppress them. And that's so non-functional. I mean, they emerge anyways. They come up anyway. So the only way to really confront that is to make a deal with them, is to, deal with the devil. In the sense of, not in the sense of some evil signing away of your soul, but in the sense of recognizing I am animal as well as spiritual. I am incarnate as well as immortal. And what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? So the way that I usually envision the primary task that we have as human beings, so a lot of people will talk about it in terms of ascension, like, oh, we need to ascend, oh, we need to transcend. To me, I think that's bullshit. I think the hard work, the real hard work, is actually incarnating to begin with. Most of us, as spirits, have not fully incarnated because we've not fully taken our love and our approval down into those dark, dark depths. And it's only when we do that, when we go into that descent into hell. I mean, Jesus, when he was crucified, he actually descended into hell before he was resurrected. And somehow people like to skip that part of the story. But he went down, all the way down. And to me, that's like a necessary part of reaching our full potential, is we need to go all the way down and give love all the way there in that depth.
Yeah, wow. I love this conversation because shadow work is something that I've been doing massively recently, and it's been unlocking so much creativity and life force and so much power that I didn't even know I had. And yeah, it's brilliant. What about the more we become shameless and expose our true selves, the more we embody who we really came here to be. So, how would you go about helping people who are struggling to expose themselves as they truly are and would really love to be able to share more of who they are, but they're afraid of, for example, being rejected or criticism or similar kind of fears? So, what do you recommend to people like this?
Yeah, so that's tough because on the one hand, I'm very sympathetic. Like, it is true that when you start being direct and honest about who you are, there's always pushback. I mean, witch hunts are still a thing. I've encountered them. Except, these days in the Western world, they tend to happen in the form of somebody attacking your reputation or attacking your credibility rather than literally burning you at a stake. But it can have the same effect of really, being harmful. Still, I found that even in the witch hunts that I experienced, even in people attacking my credibility, insulting me, whatever, it's still possible to grow from that, to get stronger from that, and to even realize that I get off on those sensations of being attacked, of being criticized, of being resented. There's some part of me that loves it. And the more that I let myself love it, the less that it actually comes towards me, I find. It's almost as if I let that part of myself be satisfied, and then I don't attract it anymore.
Okay. That's interesting,
so,
yeah.
It's very, it's interesting. So I guess to somebody who's struggling with that, but here's the other hand. The other side of it, so while here I'm very sympathetic, on the other side, I'm not very sympathetic, and I can be a real, hard ass about this, because I'm like, you know what, you need to make a choice. Like, would you like to live your life as a coward in fear of being honest about who you are and speaking in the world for what you believe in? Would you be comfortable and cowardly? Or would you like to actually step up and get things done and tell the truth and meet with the consequences of it?
Yeah.
So, witch up. Witch up.
Witch up, yeah. I love that. All right, Caroline. Well, we're getting towards the end of your interview, and I would like to ask if you have any final thoughts before you share with our viewers the ways in which they can contact you and see more about your work and what you're doing.
Oh, okay. Let's see. I don't have anything else to add. You asked such excellent questions, Bristena. Thank you.
Thank you. So how can people reach you? Do you have any projects or anything you'd like people to know about?
Sure. So the best way to stay in touch with me is to join my email list on my site, badwitch.es, which is Witch Magazine. There's multiple forms on there to join the email list. Once you join the email list, you will hear from me, and you'll hear specifically about an event that I'm putting together this October in the United States, in my home state of Pennsylvania. It's something called Witch Camp, and it's a shadow work intensive for leaders and entrepreneurs who are ready to go into those deep spaces and get all the way free and go back out into the world blazing. So yes.
Awesome. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to interview you. And I wish you all the best with your project and your witch camp, and I will be definitely following you more.
Oh, thank you, Bristena. Likewise, a pleasure.
And thank you everybody for watching today's interview. I hope you enjoyed it and that you share it on your social media and let your friends know that you're participating at this amazing online challenge for fearless warriors. I hope you start applying some of the ideas related to shadow work in your daily life. Last but not least, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Journey to Bliss, and click on the link below to get my free Bliss Blueprint with the 3 stages of radical transformation from within. I hope you enjoyed this and see you next time. Bye bye. Awesome.
Yay!
Thank you, Caroline, so much.